the Harvard IRC, and Worldview have always believed that the real impact of Model UN is not just what happens in the committees, but it is also the role that our delegates play in the community with the knowledge, the skills, and the capacities that they develop. Be it as advocates for the SDGs, as champions working to solve global issues, or as ambassadors of global citizenship in this fractured world that we live in, HMUN delegates continue their journeys as solvers and as change makers well beyond the debates at the Model UN. And for this solver journeys to be effective and for you to get the full experience to become solvers, we really believe that our delegates need to get diverse perspectives from those stakeholders who are working out there in the real world, navigating the different complexities that it poses to address the very issues that you're debating in your committees. And this particular dialogue is one of those interactions, one of those engagements to give you a peek into a very critical topic: people, planet, and profits, that elusive triple bottom line that good businesses chase to ensure that they serve society holistically. So I'd like to introduce you to our speaker. We have the pleasure and honor of having with us an industry leader par excellence, Mr. Sanjeev Kakkar, the Executive Vice President of Unilever for Middle East and North Africa, Turkey, Russia, Ukraine, and Belarus. There's, if I'm not wrong, perhaps about 1 billion people of the world live in these regions that Mr. Kakkar represents. So he leads an organization across this fairly diverse and fairly large region. And he has spent over 35 years in this organization, Unilever. He is an alumnus of the prestigious Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. And so I'll hand it over to Sanjeev here and let him talk to you about Unilever and its quest for the triple bottom line.
Thank you, Aditya, and good morning, good afternoon to all the students and participants, faculty, guests on this call. I'm really delighted to be able to speak to you, all of you, and share with you the journey of Unilever in really making sustainable living commonplace, which is our effort at integrating people, planet, and profits into a holistic vision that lies within our multi-stakeholder model that we try and practice as a company. We make just make sure this moves. Second. Yeah. We make many of the world's favorite brands. So the poll was very interesting. I could see that about 2/3 of you knew about Unilever. So it's good that I introduced the company to you through what you would know us best through, which is our brands. You got some of the brands right, but you got quite a few of them. I must say our competitors would not be happy at having their brands associated with Unilever. But these are some of the big brands that we have, the big billion-dollar brands that we have across the world. Many of them you would have used. Essentially, over 2.5 billion people use Unilever brands every day. From the time that you wake up and brush your teeth, have your first cup of tea, and then your personal care regimen through the day, your meals through the day, as well as your ice cream. All of these Unilever spans a whole range of home personal care brands, food brands, refreshment brands, which are big household names. Now, the really great thing is that these brands are great vehicles for us to touch the lives of people. And they give us a unique opportunity to create positive change, because these brands help us to interact with people like you, with consumers. And it is through these brands that we are able to live our purpose, which is making sustainable living commonplace. And that's the story that I'd like to share with you today in about 20 minutes, as to how do we make these brands come alive to really deliver on our agenda of making sustainable living commonplace. So let's take a look at where we started. Unilever started with almost more than 100 years ago, in 1885, our British founder, Sir William Lever, actually started up his own business making sunlight soap. He was a social entrepreneur, and he could see how selling low-cost soap at a time when Victorian England was going through bouts of cholera, dysentery, deaths, how selling soap could help bring about better hygienic conditions, living conditions in Britain, and would also, of course, help to grow his business. So he brought hygiene to millions and millions of people who at that point in time didn't even know about the existence of germs and or why hygiene was important. And he delivered this, he basically set up this big business around an inspiring purpose, which was to make cleanliness commonplace. And by using advertising, he was able to make cleanliness as the new social norm and thereby alleviate many of the challenges of good hygiene, which were causing a lot of, the absence of which was causing a lot of disease at that point in time in Victorian England. Now, Unilever is a global company. As I said to you, 2.5 billion people use our products daily. We have over 400 brands globally, and I showed you a small sample of our really big brands. This business, we operate in about, we sell our brands in about 190 countries. We have over 155,000 employees, and we are one of the really large companies with a big turnover of about 52 billion euros in 2019. So a company that indeed has global scale and has the ability to change and transform the lives of people and all stakeholders with whom it is in touch with. Now, today, and that brings us to the conversation that we're going to have now, the world faces much bigger and a different set of challenges than what Sir William Lever faced when he started this company. 800 million people today are without access to safe drinking water. 2 billion people are without access to proper sanitation. More than 2 million people die, 2 million children die every year due to preventable diarrheal deaths. 1 in 10 adults is obese, whilst at the same time about 1 billion people go hungry. Climate change is all around us, and we see it causing extreme weather conditions. And this is impacting life and business. Over 1 billion people live in water scarce areas, and that's only going to get worse. And with the population increasing, the demand for food, especially as more and more countries become affluent, is only exploding. And we are going to have a challenge feeding the Earth's population. Now, why do I talk about this? I talk about this because at Unilever, we believe that the world cannot wait to solve these problems. And business, such as ours, has a key role to play in solving these problems and being part of the solution because of the impact that we have through our brands across billions of people across the world. Yeah. So we have as Unilever, therefore, we have a very simple and very clear purpose. And we have moved Sir William Lever's purpose on and made it more broader to take care of all the challenges that the world faces today. And that purpose is to make sustainable living commonplace. Because we believe that it is possible for the over 7 billion people now, 9 billion which population, which will be in maybe a decade or 2 decades from now on this earth. We believe that if we truly make sustainable living commonplace, then it is possible for the 9 billion people on this planet to actually live within the natural limits of the planet. We will not need 2 or 3 Earths for us to be able to lead normal lives. And that is also the best way to sustain and ensure long-term growth and the habitability of this planet in the future. We believe that the only way to tackle this is for Unilever to really own the problem, be part of the solution, and help create the right solutions globally. In order to do that, we defined our vision. This vision basically stems from our strong belief that companies which address both the needs of the environment, the concerns of the citizens, as well as other stakeholders like shareholders who are interested in profit, are companies that will prosper over the long term. Companies that address only one set of stakeholders are not going to be able to survive into the long run. And therefore, it is this thinking which is behind our vision, that we would like to grow our business, but decouple our environmental footprint from our growth. Meaning that as our business grows, we want to reduce the impact that we have on the environment, and thereby increase our positive social impact. And our blueprint for making this happen is the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. So at Unilever, the Sustainable Living Plan essentially was launched in 2010. So it's now been almost a decade that we've been at it. And it's founded on three essential pillars. The first is help more than 1 billion people improve their health and well-being. Second, half the environmental footprint of our products. Now, as we manufacture, as we sell, as consumers use our products, there is an impact on the environment. There is packaging, there is carbon dioxide emissions, there is energy usage, there is water usage. So all of that is there. Yeah, it's important that we halve that. And we would also like to enhance the livelihoods of millions of people as we grow our business. Yeah. So these were the three pillars that our business is the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan is based on. Now, I showed you our top brands. I shared with you that we have over 400 brands, and really these brands are the vehicle through which we bring the USLP alive, through which we reduce the environmental footprint, through which we increase our positive social impact. And we have defined how every brand in our business can integrate itself integrate sustainability into its very purpose. And we call these the sustainable living brands. Such brands must have not only a very clear purpose in terms of what they will contribute to social and environmental needs, but the product also must contribute to making sure that we solve societal needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a very short video for you, and then I'm going to take a few examples of the work that our brands are doing to make the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan come alive. So please watch the video.
Every day, Unilever does good for our community. Every cup, every taste, every scrub, every shake, every spray, every pour, every day. Every Dove teaches millions of girls self-esteem. Every Domestos supports better hygiene in schools. Every year does good. Unilever.
So let's start with a few examples to make this whole thing come alive for all of you. Let's first talk about Lifebuoy. Now, every 23 seconds, there's a child who dies in this world somewhere, from either pneumonia or from diarrhea. And the simple act of hand washing, something that we're all getting intimately familiar with during these difficult times of the pandemic, is the most effective way of actually stopping child death. It reduces the incidence of pneumonia by over 23% and diarrhea by up to 45%. And we all know how important this act has now become in our lives today. However, washing with water is not enough. You do need soap because that helps to effectively kill the bacteria and the viruses that are there on your hands. And this is where Unilever comes in. With Lifebuoy, we have the biggest hand wash brand globally. And it is one of Unilever's largest sustainable living brands. And it has a clear purpose, which is to teach people how to, that hand washing, and to teach people about the importance of hand washing at the right moments and create long-term behavior change. We have extensive programs that educate children on the importance of hand washing. And to date, since we started this program since 2010, we've reached over 1.07 billion people through our hand washing program. It's a very big program by which we go out and educate children and even adults in markets where that fundamental concept of hygiene still doesn't prevail. It has now become the world's largest germ protection soap, and our Lifebuoy sales therefore help to protect lives. So that's the story of what Lifebuoy is doing and how it's reaching out to people and helping build a more sustainable living. Our second big program is around oral care, oral hygiene. The mission over here is simple, that every smile matters. And we are on a mission, therefore, to improve oral health across the world by promoting a simple but effective message, which is brush day and night. Toothache is the #1 reason why children don't attend school. Poor oral hygiene has a number of effects on our health, including impact on good cardiovascular health. And the solution is simple, which is that by simply brushing twice daily with a fluoride toothpaste, kids can reduce tooth decay by 50%. So we use our expertise. We run programs across large numbers of schools where we educate children on the importance of oral hygiene and the need to brush day and night. We provide free dental checkups. And by 2019, again, we had reached over 100 million people over the period of a decade with our message to improve their oral hygiene. The third brand is in a slightly different space, and it's Dove, which is our largest personal care brand, which goes across shampoos, conditioners, soaps, deodorants. So it spans a number of categories. And Dove is focused on improving the self-esteem of girls. Yeah. Now, women and girls are more anxious today about their look, their bodies than ever. And when they lose their confidence in their body image, they lose confidence in themselves. And many girls opt out of many activities in life because of that lack of confidence. Or they stop themselves from eating because they are worried about their appearance, and that then puts their health at risk. Dove has run women's self-esteem, girls' self-esteem programs over the last many years, since 2005 actually. And we have reached out to over 60 million young people to help build their self-esteem and positive body confidence. This is, of course, helped the Dove brand, and since Dove has been doing this program, it's become our fastest growing brand. It's our largest growing brand, and it has continued to grow. It is our largest personal care brand. It has continued to grow over all these many years, despite challenges in the marketplace. People connect with the brand a lot better, and this leads to a much stronger impact that the brand has on them. Let's shift gear a bit and come to home hygiene, where we have a big brand which is Domestos. Now, 2 in 3 people across the world are in danger of sickness and disease because they don't have access to clean toilets. In fact, large parts of the population are still defecating in the open. We believe that access to sanitation is a basic human right, and we are contributing to this through our leading toilet brand, which is Domestos. Our journey over here began way back in 2009, where we began to work with UNICEF on sanitation, where for every bottle of a specially marked Domestos, we were donating 5% of this proceeds to UNICEF's sanitation programs. We've supported the government of India, which has a very large Swachh Bharat program, to build over 220,000 toilets in India. We've rolled out globally the Cleaner Toilets, Brighter Futures program to ensure in schools, to ensure that kids have access to clean and usable toilets. Because it is a well-known fact that a lot of children don't go to school because they don't find clean toilets over there. By 2019, we have helped almost 28 million people have access to cleaner and more hygienic toilets. So that was the story of Domestos. And these were a few examples, and we have this happening across a whole range of brands. And in 2018, we looked at those brands, and we found that those brands that have really got purpose integrated into their heart and core and are communicating this and actively propagating this within society make up 70% of our growth. They are growing 69% faster than brands that do not have purpose at their core. And that rate of growth is twice that of the brands, of the average company rate of growth. So these results clearly show that purpose at the heart of a brand, which is driving sustainable living, is good not just for solving society's problems, but also good for business. So what's good for society is good for business. And that brings me to that one part of the loop, which was people or society, and purpose and profits. Yeah, so purpose and profit is what I have linked with right now. And I'll bring the link into people few charts down the line in my presentation. The second big pillar that we have is, we said we want to reduce our environmental impact by half. We are a big company, but we are one of the many big companies that are there globally that impact the environment. And we want to be part of the solution. So our goal is that by 2030, we want to halve the environmental footprint that we are making, that we are having in the make and use of our products as we grow our business. We focus on a few big areas: water, waste, CO2 reduction, and plastics. We have reduced over the period last 10 years, we've reduced our CO2 emissions by 65%, water usage per ton of product by almost 47%. We are now a zero waste to landfill company, meaning that from our manufacturing sites and offices, there is no waste that goes to landfills. It is all reprocessed and used or sustainably used up in downstream manufacturing locations. We are therefore really focused on making sure that we reduce the impact on our environment. Every new manufacturing site that we put up. Latest example is the Dubai personal care factory that we have just set up a few years back. It has the largest private sector solar plant, which gives almost more than 2/3 of the power that we need comes from that solar plant. We have reduced energy demand through use of a lot of environmentally friendly lighting, daylight harvesting, smart building insulation. We recycle all the water for usage, etc., etc. So all our sites that are now coming up are really following in these green practices. We have a big commitment to plastics. Now, this is a big challenge that the world faces. There's a hell of a lot of plastics floating around in the environment, in the ocean. It's not that plastics is bad. Plastics has its place. It is a cheap product that is convenient to pack things in and for consumers to use. The question is, how do we make sure that it is also environmentally friendly, that the places for plastics is not on our streets and the rivers or in the ocean. So Unilever has made some big commitments here. We've said that by 2025, we will cut our use of virgin plastic in half. We will 100% of our plastic that we use will be reusable, recyclable, compostable plastic packaging. So all the plastic that we use can be then recycled. We are going to collect and process more plastic than we put into the environment every year. So this involves a huge amount of effort. It involves a huge amount of partnerships with governments, with waste collection systems, with suppliers of recyclable plastic And it involves setting up these partnerships for us to be able to reach our goals. And the last pillar that I want to talk to you about is about enhancing livelihood. So the work that we do within our supplier and distribution networks, involving millions of smallholder farmers, distributors, and retailers, many of whom are women, and we help them to deliver business growth and positive social impact. We strongly believe in fairness in the workplace. We implement the UN guiding principles on business and human rights throughout our operations. And we work with suppliers to ensure that we are promoting their fundamental human rights. We advance opportunities for women. 50% of our workforce at the managerial level is female. We are a gender balanced organization, and because we try and promote complete gender equality and unstereotype the workplace, because harmful gender norms can really hold women back from achieving their potential. And we are building an inclusive business that involves extensive utilization of smallholder farmers. So sustainability is not just about doing good to the environment. Sustainability also has a very strong business logic to it. And that business logic is that 65% of our total energy use comes from renewable sources. That creates less risk for us from the impact that the environment may have on our system. It is helping us to, as I already spoke about, driving growth. It is helping us to save energy costs in our factories, as a lot of our factories go green, and we've saved enormous amount of energy costs over the years. And all of this builds more trust between Unilever and our stakeholders, between Unilever and our employees, between Unilever and potential employees. We are the #1 FMCG graduate employer of choice in 50 countries, between Unilever and governments, between Unilever and regulatory agencies, between Unilever and our shareholders. And it is this multi-stakeholder model that we really believe is at the heart of how we operate as a company, and is at the heart of our Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. So in conclusion, we are making good progress on our Sustainable Living Plan, and we are on track with more than 80% of the targets that we set in 2010. We have helped a large number of people improve their health and well-being. Our products are having the right impact on the environment. We are working with women, with smallholder farmers. We are working with sustainably sourcing our raw material and products, and essentially helping to grow the communities within which we are a part of. Going forward, we believe that this is a job which one company cannot do alone. This is something that requires a huge amount of partnerships. It requires everyone to embrace this way of working, and it requires governments, NGOs, big businesses, startups, students to come together, because imagine what we can achieve all together to really work to making sure that we treasure and love and sustain the planet that we all live on. We work with many agencies globally. We work with a lot of the UN agencies. UNICEF is a big collaborator. We work with PSI, WaterAid. We are helping to improve water, sanitation, hygiene for millions of countries where it's needed most: India, Vietnam, Bangladesh. We work with Solidaridad, Oxfam, and others, and we are helping to train millions and millions of entrepreneurs, small farmers, to really farm and work and build their businesses sustainably. So that's what I wanted to share with you, a little bit about the journey of Unilever and how we are working to complete that cycle of purpose, profit, and people, all coming together to produce what we think is the winning business model for the future. Good for us as a business, good for all our stakeholders, and good for the planet. So with that, I'm going to stop talking, and I'm very happy to take your questions now. Ready to get into that.
Yeah, I think before we get into the questions, we had a few other polls, but I think we can come to them because I think come to them at the end of the session because there seem to be quite a lot of questions here. So one of the questions that I had, Sanjeev, and I picked this up based on one of the questions that the delegates asked, which is that, you know, I think often problems that, for example, with plastic, 20, 25 years back, I think plastic was hailed as one of the big solutions to make life easy and convenient for people. But today, of course, over the last 10 years, I think there's a greater focus on reducing the use of plastic and the type of plastic that we use. Now, does that mean that large organizations like Unilever have to start anticipating what might be the problems that we might be encountering over the next few decades? And if so, how do you look into the future?
So look, yes, plastics, as I said, is something which is inherently not bad, because I cannot imagine life in the modern world without plastics. It is one of the great inventions which has made life convenient for human beings on this planet. The question is not, is plastics good or bad? The question is, what are we doing with all the plastics that is there, which has been produced? Yes, there is a lot of inventory of plastics which is already there in the environment. At the same time, we are going to be producing a lot of plastics, and if we don't do anything about it, then we do have a serious challenge. The big issue over here is that plastics, if not reused, has a shelf life in the environment of anywhere from 500 to 1,000 years. It will lie around before it degrades. So the question is that the plastic that is being used, how do you use it and then reuse it and then reuse it and create a circular economy loop so that whatever is produced actually goes back into the economy rather than being thrown out of the loop into the environment. And the question over here is one about what kind of plastic is being used. And if you use the right kinds of plastic, then they can be recycled. The second question is, how do you pick that plastic up from the environment? And third question is, how do you then create the necessary infrastructure to process that plastic so that it can be recycled? And then companies like ours can buy that recycled plastic and again use it in our value chain. Not an easy process because it involves so many people in that loop. And that is what companies like ours are working to set up, what we call the Circular Economy Initiative. That is what we are doing, working with governments, working with waste collectors, working with recycled plastic manufacturers, and then, of course, making sure that our brand teams are then using those plastics in terms of their product design into the future. So it is not an easy task. But I think if we all come together, it is a task that can certainly make sure that over the next 2 decades, we do clean up the environment and the world. And one of the things that I would urge everybody to do is to make sure that we all move away from single-use plastics, because they are the biggest degraders to our environment, where you use something and then throw it into the environment.
I think while in our Q&A, the plastic issue seems to be a very popular topic. There's one other thing which I think, we found to be excellent about Unilever is the gender balance that the organization has managed to maintain within the organization. I was reading a report recently that globally, the management of Unilever has more than a 50-50 balance between men and women and of all genders. This is, of course, not a solution that can be implemented overnight. So how has Unilever nurtured this balance in the organization?
I think the journey started about, I would say, almost 15 years back. And it has, we started as any organization would be with a gender balance, which was somewhere in the mid-20s. And we have, through a few key things that have been done, reached a situation where we are gender balanced. So I think the first is there has to be demonstrable leadership commitment. This does not happen on its own because there is always inertia within an organization to change. So there is a need to really bring about strong leadership commitment. So all senior leaders carry gender balance as a key objective, and it has to be driven from the very top, because there will be a lot of inherent resistance in the organization when when you try and change what is essentially a male-dominated organization to one that is gender balanced. So I think leadership commitment is really important, without which it won't happen. The second is that you need to make the workplace friendly for women. There are a lot of stereotypes in the workplace. There is a lot of workplace harassment which would prevail in many parts of the world. And it is important to make sure that women feel comfortable and safe working in the organization and the environment. Third and very important pillar is to support women as they go through the cycle where they begin to get into raising families. And that is, we found, always a very critical moment where if we are not supporting women, then they tend to drop out either for a very long period of time or drop out completely. So putting in place practices that help women during the time when they are raising a young family, and encouraging them through a number of agile working practices, etc., to be able to get through that period in their lives, balancing the requirements of home and work, and then come back to work full time is another critical pillar. So I think these are some of the things that had to be done, and it's worked. I mean, the results are there. We are pretty much gender balanced across. But the next big challenge for us, quite honestly, is that we need to build the gender balance at every level in the management pool. So it is strong at the lower end. It gets thinner by the time we reach, let's say, the level that I would be at, and where you're talking of only about 20 or 25% women. So if we are able to not only increase the catchment pool of women in the organization, but then to help them to stay on for the next decade, 15 years, then it would be gender balanced all through the verticals in the organization, which is really a big goal. Not easy, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I think all our Gen Z would love to join an organization which puts an emphasis on gender balance. So there's a question from Pranshu that I found interesting. And Pranshu's question is about reducing or tempering the consumption by users, because I think everybody's talking today about how there's an overconsumption, which is a big problem in our society today. So how does Unilever educate its consumers about how much is too much?
Yeah. So we work on this on a couple of fronts. I just quickly read the question. It's a very good question. The first is we tailor our products to make them environmentally friendly, to make them friendly in terms of consumption. So for instance, one of the big challenges that is there with detergents, which we all use in our washing machines, is that the detergents over time tend to find their way into the water systems across the world. So of course these, and that's a challenge. Now, the key thing that has to be done is to encourage responsible use of these detergents. So one of the big streams of innovation that has happened over the last few years is around making sure that the kind of products that are going into the manufacture of these detergents become a lot more environmentally friendly than what they were into the future. That we're not putting things like phosphates, etc., into the environment. The second is that detergents tend to use a lot of water when you wash your clothes. So can you create product formulations that are easy rinse, meaning that they need just a bucket full of water in a less developed economy, rather than 5 buckets full of water if you're doing a bucket wash. So you formulate your detergents so that they are easy rinse or quick rinse detergents that move this that clean much faster with lesser water. That's one example. Another example is childhood obesity is a big concern these days. Rising cases of childhood diabetes is a big concern these days. So how do you cut down the level of sugars in all the products? So we are the world's largest seller of ice cream. And we have very strict standards in terms of the level of sugar in the ice cream that's been dramatically reduced. Who we will market the ice cream to, where we will sell these ice creams, to make sure that young children are not getting influenced towards excessive consumption. All our products now have strong programs to reduce the level of salt in them, so that we're not contributing to cardiovascular issues going forward. So there are work streams that work on designing products, not just in terms of the formulations or but even the packaging, to make sure that everything that is going out is much more environmentally sensitive than what it was when we make the change. And that's a constant journey that we're on with some pretty ambitious goals.
Is there a question that you'd like to pick up, Sanjeev, or can I go for the next one?
I was seeing there's a question that says, are we sponsoring the HMUN or Worldview? So I just want to clarify that we are not. We have no sponsorship association with anybody. We are just a company trying to do our very best for the environment, and that's the reason that we were asked to come and speak to you all.
Yeah, and whenever we do have sponsors being represented as speakers, you will see it very obviously on our social media channels, delegates, so don't worry about that.
There's another question that is very topical, which if I can just take on, because I think it goes at the heart of what we are as a company, which is how Unilever is working and helping during this pandemic. So there are many initiatives which Unilever has taken during the pandemic. We have 100 million fund which has been created globally, which is now being distributed as either products or donations into governments and NGOs. We are working with some really large organizations around the world, particularly UNICEF, UNHCR, etc., in order to make sure that these funds are distributed through the right agencies. So there's a very large global fund, but then there are huge amounts of local initiatives that are happening, where every company in every market is working to provide, donate sanitizers, home and hygiene products to municipalities, to governments, to agencies that are involved in the pandemic effort. So there's, of course, a very large global commitment, but there's also a huge amount of local commitment, where employees, for instance, in the Middle East, have contributed, personally contributed, and then the company has added on to that contribution, and then that money is being shared with local authorities to help them in the fight against the pandemic. So it's part of who we are. It's part of our DNA. We believe, it's what we believe is important for us to be able to give back to the communities. So back to you.
I think, yeah, there's one question which is connected to that about the particular situation that we are in right now, about whether that slows down some of the sustainability efforts and the progress that we've made in the recent past, because obviously countries today are faced with the question of having to prioritize survival of big parts of their population and their economies. So how do you see that impacting COVID impacting sustainability efforts?
It's a good question. I think there is a short-term negative impact for sure, because everybody's mind and attention is focused on a very, very immediate problem, while sustainability, the environment, the climate is a longer term horizon issue. So yes, there is that little bit of setback, but I'm not too worried about it, quite honestly. What I feel has certainly begun to happen is sensitivity of people to the environment and to what we are doing to this planet and how we are living, and thereby causing a lot of these problems for ourselves, has become very high. And I think the receptiveness of people across the world now to messaging around that we should all operate in a manner that is sustainable for the long-term good health, welfare of human society, for our very survival as a human society, I think it becomes people are going to be a lot more receptive to that, having gone through this, what I would call our first major collective challenge as humanity in the last 100 years. It's like humanity facing one common challenge and one common enemy. And I think all of that is certainly going to change the way people look at the planet and look at fellow human beings across the world. So I hope some good comes out of this. And this is my belief that this is the good that will come out of this.
Yeah, we certainly hope so. And yeah, I'm optimistic too that this is a good reminder for all of us. So there are a lot of questions regarding people, planet, profit. I wanted to move away a little bit to focus on another aspect of your your journey, which is that the fact that you've led large teams, you've led this large organization for a really long time, which our delegates can really benefit from. So the first question that I have, which is something that these delegates will face soon when they get into the committees, is how do you deal with the differences in diversity? You've led in different parts of the world, and you have teams coming from various backgrounds. So how do you deal with cultural diversities of people, depending on where they come from and who they are, as a leader?
Yeah. So look, my experience in this actually can be simplified and crystallized into one or two simple learnings. The first is that human beings are generally alike. It is in our mind that we create these boundaries that, oh, he's Turkish or she's Arabic or he's Russian, and therefore we have these stereotypes in our minds about how people are. But when you peel away the layers, a human being is a human being is a human being, driven by the same emotions, driven by the same aspirations, driven by the same fears. It is amazing that you move from one Unilever business to another in different companies and countries, and essentially people are the same. So if you deal with people shorn of all the stereotypes on a one-on-one, human-to-human basis in an authentic manner, you don't really have to worry about diversity and nationality and etc. At the same time, there is another side to it, which is that you have to be sensitive then still to local cultures, local religion, local societal norms, which you have to be sensitive to so that you're not trampling over people, or you're not inadvertently causing people to feel bad or lose face in certain ways. But that's all there is to it, quite honestly. It is, deal with people as human beings in an authentic manner and be sensitive to local cultures and traditions. And that is pretty much the guide rule for making sure that you can operate across cultures seamlessly.
And I think related to that is another question here, which is about I think when you have a vision, when you have certain goals, how do you get everybody to come together to work towards it? And again, that's something our delegates are going to need in their committees soon.
That is the hallmark of good or great leadership. I think the primary role of a leader is to be able to energize people to move from point A to point B. So if you're trying to drive change as a leader, people are at point A, you need to move them to point B. And your primary role is to see that people do that in a manner that they are motivated to do that in as best and as rapid a manner as possible. And I think, again, some very simple principles here. people follow a purpose, people get engaged behind something that is larger than themselves and larger than just the pursuit of their salary or their next paycheck. The role of the leader is to make sure that he creates that vision or she creates that vision and engages people behind that vision in a way that that becomes the reason why people come to work. The minute people come to work for, hey, because it's for my next paycheck or because I just have a good time at work, you're going to lose people. You're not going to be able to move them from point A to point B. So creating that vision and engagement is the only way that this can be made to happen. And different leaders have different ways of doing it. That's a long discussion which we can have. But fundamentally, that is what is there. When Paul Polman came in 10 years back into Unilever as our CEO, he was the driving force behind the Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. And it energized the whole organization. And everybody felt proud to be working in a company. It's not that we were not doing this work before. We were always doing it. But the minute it got formulated into a USLP, enshrined in our vision, suddenly you felt that, hey, this is a great company. I love to come and work over here. And so the power of purpose, the power of vision is crucial in helping drive that change in people.
Is there a specific incident that you remember which was most challenging for you as a leader, and how did you overcome that?
I think there have been many challenging moments. One of the most challenging for me in my professional career was when I moved from the sunny climes of India to the winters of Russia. It was a big change, of course, to make that transition. But I think the timing of that was that I landed up in the country just about a week or 10 days before Lehman Brothers collapsed and the global financial crisis broke out in 2008. Landing in a new environment with a massive global business problem, economic problem hitting you in the face, was a huge challenge of adjusting, adapting, and helping the business to recover, all at a time when I was new. The environment was very different. The business operations were very different from what I was used to. People were new and different in a sense. I think there are many learnings for me that come out of that experience. But the most important learning for me is the need to surround yourself with a good team and the need to trust your team to be able to do the job. Because my enduring lesson in business has been that none of us can achieve anything on our own. Whatever we achieve as business is a collective and a team effort. So surrounding yourself with the right people who are smarter than you. The idea is not to prove to your team that you're the smartest, but the idea is to surround yourself with people who are smarter than you. Each one in their own space smarter than you. Each one in their own space better than what you could do. To surround yourself with such people, to be able to engage their hearts and souls literally behind the business, to energize them, and then you can achieve wonders. And I think that really came home to me at a time when I landed in that very, very difficult situation, and then how we built the business out of that.
How much more time do we have with you, Sanjeev? Because it's 5 o'clock.
I'm at your disposal. So if you want to ask me a few more questions, let's spend another 10-15 minutes. If people on the call are not getting bored and saying, what's happening, I'm quite happy to go on for another 10-15 minutes for sure.
Yeah, I see a couple of questions. One is here about from Shresht. about what are the unorthodox and innovative solutions for dealing with the environmental challenges, sustainability challenges. How does Unilever nurture innovation?
How do we nurture innovation?
I mean, that's my part of the question, but you could choose to answer what Shreesh.
No, I think it's a good question. I think the thing is, innovation is the heart and soul or blood, lifeblood of a company. Sorry, of a company like Unilever. Any consumer goods company, any big consumer goods company thrives on bringing products that consumers feel are going to make them look good, feel good, get more out of life, etc. And if we don't innovate, then we die as an organization. So I think, therefore, having a process and having a culture and a mindset that fosters innovation is critical to our success as an organization. Why do I say process? Because we are a very large company. We operate in hundreds of countries across the world. We need to have the right balance between our global scale and local consumer requirements. Yeah, we need to apply global scale where global scale is relevant, like research and development, big trends, capitalizing on big trends, global acquisitions to bring new innovation in as well. But all of this has to be tuned to the local consumer, because there is no such thing like a global consumer. There is an Indian consumer, there is a Turkish consumer, there's a Filipino consumer, there's a Vietnamese consumer. There's no global consumer. I don't know of anyone who's a global consumer. And each one of them have their own needs. Of course, there will be some global trends that would be there. Each market is unique and each consumer segment is unique. So you need to take your global scale and you need to be able to apply it locally through marketing teams that are innovating on the ground. So you need that link and you need that agility in a way to be able to operate locally. So you need the global processes, the global R&D, the global frameworks for innovation, but you need the local application. I think that's one important challenge that almost every large company faces, including Unilever. And each one of us have found our own unique ways to address that through a lot of local empowerment and local teams and who are empowered to innovate locally. I think the second is to have a culture within the organization that fosters innovation, that fosters picking trends, moving on them quickly, getting there first before a competitor does, which fosters creativity. And that is about the environment and the work environment and the degree of empowerment that you build in an organization. It cannot be a top-down, it's not a military top-down hierarchical structure that would work, that would foster innovation. It has to be a very different culture that is built. Then you need a mindset. And the mindset has to be one which is of agility, of speed, of a growth mindset, which is, I want to get there first. I want to capitalize on the trends first. I want to do it first before anyone else so that I get the first mover reward. And finally, a mindset of quality, which is that whatever I put out, I'm going to put out as a quality innovation that consumers are going to look at it and say, wow, that's something that I really want to have. So it's a whole gamut of things that have to come together to make sure that a company remains a successful innovator into the future, including the ability to cut your losses and drop something if it's not working, rather than drag it on. So let's face it, I mean, it's only 2 or 3 innovations out of 10 that really hit the jackpot. So you've got to learn to cut out the rest and move on.
And for all our Gen Z delegates who are watching this webinar, what would your advice be in terms of what can they do to hold organizations accountable? Because not everyone might be forthcoming to just come and be part of a chat with them. Or, of course, they can go on the websites and read the sustainability reports or follow the organizations on social media channels. But what else can they do to, how can they raise awareness about issues, and what would your advice be to them?
So one of the things that I really value about this generation is that they have a much, much higher level of social purpose in their mind. And they are very clear about what their life should be like and what life on this planet should be like than any other generation that has come so far. Yeah. And as a leader in an organization trying to drive change, I actually see the young people as a force for change and a force for good for us to be able to drive that change. Yeah. And so my advice to the people on the call is that, look, you all will join organizations in the future. Yeah. Some of you may join corporates like Unilever. Some of you may end up working in public service organizations. Some of you may work in NGOs. Some of you may work in the government. Wherever you are, you have to be your true authentic self that you are right now. As I can see from a lot of the questions, there's a lot of energy, there's a lot of enthusiasm, there's a lot of questioning as to, why are you doing this and why not this, etc. And I can't answer all the questions. I'd love to, but I can't. So continue to be that authentic voice, because leaders need authentic voices in the organization. I need authentic voices in the organization, and I welcome authentic voices. I welcome the challenge. I welcome the challenge in a lot of the questions here today. And I can tell you that there are really young people in my organization who are equally challenging. When I sit down with them for a monthly conversation over a cup of tea, the questions get thrown at me in an even more challenging format than this one, because it's face to face. So, be your authentic self, be challenging, and help to drive that change, because leaders need people like you to drive the change, to break the inertia in companies. But don't lose that. That would be my only advice in this respect.
Thank you so much, Sanjeev. I think we have a few polls that we wanted to run, after which we are going to get all the delegates together for a photograph before we end the session. So I think Suraj, if you could put the polls up as the delegates answer these polls. I want to take that take this opportunity to thank you for the time that you've given us, and to our delegates for being wonderful participants and asking some very good questions. Sorry we couldn't answer all your questions, but perhaps you can send those questions over on Instagram and or on Twitter, and we'll try and respond to all of them. Along with thanking Sanjeev, I also want to thank the team that worked with us to put this together. Priya, Lisa, Zahabia, Kavya, and Suraj. Thank you for helping us.
So thank you, and I just want to also thank you all for being such patient listeners, and I hope you benefited from this and carry away some things that will hopefully stay with you and help you to be the change agent that I would love to see a lot more younger people to be.
So I think on that closing note, I do want to ask one last question, Sanjeev, which is, what are there things that you did when you were 16, 17 that were helpful to you throughout your career? So, what would those be? Because I'm sure that'll be great advice for our 16, 17-year-olds.
I grew up at a very different time, and I grew up in an environment which was also an environment of shortage, and in a country that was still India, which was still sort of coming out of an era of almost socialism. But I think the principle of what was important for me probably doesn't change. What is important over here is to have a clear vision of what you want to be 20 years, 25 years into the future. And to have the discipline to then get down to it and do it every day. As then and so now, there are no shortcuts for anyone. And if someone is seeking to achieve something in life through shortcuts, yeah, maybe there'll be that odd individual who will be lucky and will get it because they just get the right breaks. But for 99% of people, it's about discipline, getting in there and putting your head down and doing what you have to do to make it work for you. So that's the only message I want to give somebody who's starting off.
I think that's a lovely message. And before we close, I also want to congratulate all our delegates for choosing to continue the learning journeys even at such a difficult time. We had to obviously cancel the HMUN Dubai that was supposed to happen from the 5th of June in Dubai. We're doing this special online edition, but the fact that you chose to not be disappointed, you said that we want to still continue this learning journey online. That's a testament to your commitment, your determination to become solvers and to become change makers. I think one of those things that Sanjeev mentioned about not taking shortcuts, I think you already did. You demonstrated that by making sure that you didn't take the shortcut of letting go, but continuing to be part of HMUN online.